is up, my fine friends? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, though, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Belgian Post-Blackgaze band Mother.
You just try to shoehorn hardcore wherever you can and everything.
I know, it's on my
If
brain
in doubt, just mention hardcore.
all the time. The band's new album, 2, will be released on October 25th via Consouling Sounds. From the quiet shores of Ostend, Belgium, emerges a band whose sound is as relentless and vast as the North Sea itself. Their music, much like their coastal hometown, is a study in contrasts, tranquil melodies giving way to towering walls of sound, gentle introspection swept away by waves of raw power. In 2020, Mother released their debut album, 1, a single composition with immersive storytelling. The album was a journey, one that flowed seamlessly from beginning to end, inviting the listener to lose themselves in the narrative. Now, Mother returns with 2, the highly anticipated sequel that promises to pull audiences even deeper into their world. 2 is not merely a follow-up, it is the continuation of a grand, overarching story that began with 1. Just like its predecessor, 2 was written as one continuous piece, meant to be experienced in a single sitting. Growing up, we listened to a lot of concept albums, Tour Explains, reflecting on the band's influences. The Ocean Collective, Uneven Structure, Tesseract, these bands created albums that were more than just a collection of songs. They were cohesive, immersive experiences. For Mother, writing in this way came naturally. I tend to compose long passages of music that evolve within a broader musical arc, so the idea of a single composition album was a perfect fit for us. Driven by narrative, the band explores different aspects of storytelling based on a central theme of every album of theirs. The figure of Mother, both nurturing and destructive, serves as the linchpin of their story. Lyrically, I've never wanted to strictly define who or what the Mother is. While I draw from personal experiences, I want listeners to interpret the figure in their own way. For some, she might be a familial connection. For others, she might be a distant, protective presence. But this isn't a tale of happiness. It's about the love and hate that exists between the protagonist and the mother figure, about the tension between self-centrism and altruism, which we all encounter at different points in our lives. With Mother 2, the band have created, with 2, Mother have created an album that is not just heard but felt. A visceral, all-encompassing experience that demands the listener's full attention. The album was recorded at home by the band, and then reamped and mixed at Much Love Studio by Mr. Tim de Geiter of Dodseskader.
Ah, right. Because I was starting to wonder at what point here do we connect the tissue?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's always that connective tissue, Doug.
How do we bring it full circle? And you've just shown me how we bring it full circle there.
Drums were recorded by Geert de Wageneer at Boma Studio. New band, hadn't heard of Mother before. Also hadn't heard the first installment of this either, which came back out back in 2020. However, I'm finding myself someone that really enjoys like a continuous piece of music. The kind of older I get, the more I feel like this is kind of my jam. I kind of like this type of stuff.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's an age thing or I'm not sure. I don't know, but I seem to like it more and more. I don't know if it's. I think it's something about it that's quite immersive. And I think Mother have a particular set of skills, a particular blend of sounds and ideas that could potentially pull something like this off. This band primarily kind of sit within like a black gaze, kind of post-black metal kind of style. But this is an album that also kind of weaves in moments of like post-rock and doom and bits of sludge. So there's plenty of options in the kind of melting pot for Mother to get explorative and on this release, and and not kind of repeat themselves as well. And I must admit, I'm kind of digging what these guys are doing, Duncan. I went back and I listened to the first album.
What was that called again?
I think it was One, if memory serves.
One, right. And the new album was called?
Is it second? No, two. Two is...
Dave, I'll never remember that. Too complicated.
I'll keep you right. But the first thing I noticed, like when I listened to the first album and I went straight into this one, this band have come on like in a massive way between the first album and the second album. That album, like I said, was another like continuous piece. But it leaned a bit more into post-metal, I would say. The tempos and the kind of weight of that album were much slower, much kind of girthier sounding. And it was cool. Like I love post-metal, but for me, it did become a little bit too like cyclical at times, maybe just a little bit too familiar and samey as it went on. I felt like it needed a bit more variation just to keep more of a kind of engagement there with the album. This new release, much more urgent. Like this one comes like straight out of the gate, like blast beats, like scorched vocals, really blackened riffs. And it just kind of grabbed my attention much quicker than that first album. And from there, it just kind of like pulls you along for this ride. But what I really enjoyed about this album was it's not an album that will sit within that like fiery kind of pace for the album's entirety. On the heavier side, Mother are switching between tempo and style, and from like a kind of really kind of ripping black metal to slow, kind of sludgy, kind of post metal. And I think that variety and range on this album makes the journey of this release much more appealing. They also don't just, hit the foot on the pedal and just kind of go with it. It's not, the distortion pedal isn't just on for the full album. This is an album that has these really like beautiful passages of clean and atmospheric guitars, which cleverly kind of blend and transition into those more chaotic parts of the album. And it just adds to the kind of size of this album, and really helps create a very seamless kind of flow of that kind of 40 minutes of music. The kind of different sections that make up this one track are kind of woven together like in a kind of like story-like fashion, I suppose. You can feel the track change and the narrative change as you kind of travel through this, which for me made it again really engaging to listen to. If you like bands like Mole or Deafheaven, that are masters of that kind of like blend of bleakness and light, there's a lot here to get excited by. And I feel like for Mother to be doing this at this level on album number 2 is extremely impressive. Like Deafheaven are like 5 albums in now.
Oh yeah, they've been out for a while.
Yeah, so they've had that kind of 5 albums to create that, build on that experience. Granted, Sunbather was their second album and is technically a masterpiece, but
yeah. One could argue they peaked early, Dave.
Maybe a bad example, but the detail in the songwriting from Deafheaven has just become like more impressive.
Diorama's the second album by Mole, isn't it?
That's also true. Yeah, that's.
I mean, we're like Dave. We're fucked, right? I bought the mission.
But I'll go back to Mother. The first half of this album really showcases Mother in their kind of sweet spot. So they're like transitioning between those really like ferocious blasts and really like kind of barbed, blackened guitars. Into this like really churning kind of post-metal sound, and then into these really like tasteful clean sections with these like really kind of soaring lead guitars. But I actually felt like the album got better the more that it went on. That second half for me really just upped the level of emotion on the release. I felt it get kind of more emotional as it went on. Part of that was probably from the vocal performance of Tour. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. It's Tuur, Tour, not entirely sure. But his vocal on this is fantastic, and it really like adds to the tone of the release. His voice is like utterly scathing, like at times. You get this real like kind of tortured emotion from him that comes across very very believable in every kind of scream that he does. Musically, I also think the second half of the release was more distinctive. The tempo changes and the rhythms in certain parts were different to what they'd done in the first half. There were actually a couple of riffs and a couple of grooves towards the end of the track that gave me some kind of Gojira vibes at times, especially when they bring in, there's a really kind of like fast kind of lead work beneath the main riff. It was like very reminiscent of that band. It's one of those albums that like when it finished, I was like, that just felt really satisfying, when it finished. And it was one that I was like not hesitant to just stick on straight away again. Just hit the play button again. It's not one that you can kind of jump in and out of though, because it's a continual piece. It's definitely like a sit down and listen to the full thing to get the most out of it. But and I think that helps kind of you to appreciate all those little transitions that they do within that 40 minutes. Even at 40 minutes though, it didn't feel like a long release at all. Not any of this felt like it was kind of overstaying for me. I mean, I don't have huge criticisms about it. I think it's maybe not a bunch of styles that you haven't heard done before. It's the styles they've picked have been kind of melded by other bands, but there's something to be said about bands that just really kind of deliver it at such a high quality, and I think Mother do that on this second release. I also like to say that the production on this is most definitely an improvement over part one. Part one was a little raw in places for me in the production, whereas this feels a bit more refined, a bit more balanced. It's still got that kind of grit to it. It's got a very visceral feel in those blackened parts, but the instrumentation feels like it's just been captured with a bit more finesse on this one. So I think like the band, Geert and Tim have done a great job in making this feel much bigger and grander than before. But also like you sometimes feel like you are just kind of sitting in the room with them as well at the same time, which I really liked. I really enjoyed this. A band that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on going forward. I think this is a really, really strong release from the band. What about yourself? What did you think of 2 by Mother?
I mean, what are we doing here, Dave? Dosseskada, year 1, year 2. Mother 1, 2. I like it. It's all coming together. Now, what's interesting is like when I put this over into my Apple Music, other services are available. Without the context or the PR, because I don't read that. Just getting all my catchphrases out the way at the start here. First thing that came up was 2, the band, Mother, the genre Blackgaze, and 1 track, 40 minutes, 26 seconds.
Yeah.
And I will be honest, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
I did think to myself, why? And could this be? Recently, we did Lure In, which they sent as an album, which was essentially 1 track, but it's because the track hadn't been split up into songs; it was just 1 long track. And I did wonder if that was maybe what was going on here. It was like, is there 1 long song? Am I going to have to try and think about where things are finishing and stuff? Evidently, very quickly, it was established that it was 1 long track. There is no definite break. There is no quiet moment here. It's, consistent movement from start to finish. I also got a little bit... I'm just going to get all my preconceived issues that were pretty much rectified at the way. Blackgaze is a genre that either really works for me or totally doesn't work for me. Very much like black metal, actually, is a genre that either works for me or, just it's, like the worst thing on the planet. Yeah. So the bands that are good at it, like, tend to elevate both genres, actually the shoegaze and the black metal, to a different realm, and that's what makes it interesting. The bands that are not great at it are the ones that think they can, just do shoegaze and do some widdly screaming And that makes it Blackgaze, or have terrible production but a nice ambient chord, and that's what makes it black. So I was like, what are we going to get here? The album artwork itself had me in straight away because it looked like big Stellar Skarsgård from Dune 2, like in that big black pool. That's like it's all the stuff that I would associate with black metal. It's like blacks and greys and different looking. So hit play on this one, and what caught me straight away is, this has got good production. So instantly I was happy. And like you say, it goes right for the jugular.
Yeah.
I mean, all the bands we've mentioned there, I think the black metal is more pronounced traditionally on this. That's not to say that Deafheaven don't have black metal tracks, they certainly do, but their black metal is more American black metal than it is kind of Scandi black metal sound. Mother have a more Scandi black metal sound. I kind of appreciate that about it, but it's really well produced. Right for the jugular. Guitars aren't overproduced. Vocals are at the point of distortion, but never to the point where they go over. And drum production is nice and crisp. And you can make out all the movements. But once again, by the 5-minute mark, I was like, is this what we're getting here? Does it make movements? And yes, it does. At the 10-minute mark, that the Ocean Collective influence you mentioned starts to kick in. We get kind of almost Tool-esque tribal drums, big atmospheric vocals, and this whole section that splits everything open. And it did kind of catch me by surprise because it was the last thing I was expecting. Even the bands you've mentioned that have that Blackgaze influence don't really do that. It's more the shoegaze influence than that kind of atmospheric post-metal that kind of works its way through. The fact that, once again, they've mentioned in their PR there that, inspiration is like bands like Tesseract, for example. I kind of heard it here. I could hear not the genty widdliness, but the kind of proggy awesomeness. It's there for sure. What works for this as a whole is the movements. They're really well placed, and none of them stay overlong out with that opening section. That opening 10 minutes is designed, I think, to continually build aggression and anger and rawness. So when that first bout of melody kicks in, it is so contrasted against it. It really stands out. And then from that point onwards, they play an interesting juggling game between the two.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. The back half of this album is where I think the band get a bit more daring. I think they start to realise that even movement doesn't have to be one or the other. It can actually be a combination of the both. And sometimes it's benefited by having that. Like yourself, I was surprised how quickly this flew in. Like, I've listened to some 40-minute albums this year that I felt went on for eternity. And this one here finished in a way where I was like, we can just do this again. It is a live by the sword, die by the sword release, though. Whilst you were saying that you are getting into that kind of long-form one track, there are a lot of people that don't do music like that anymore. In fact, there's a whole generation that are like the TikTok generation that want things to be snappy and short and right to the point. And I think that's where the recommending this album becomes difficult, because I don't think I could say to someone, you sit down and listen to it, and you can switch it off and then go and do something and come back. You have to listen to it in a oneer to appreciate its full value. But then again, I like albums that make me do that. I don't want everything to be easily packaged, easily described, or even easily recommended. The production, I think, is awesome in this. Like, genuinely punchy when it needs to be, full of depth and atmosphere, and it really works for it. So yeah, very much like yourself, I am kind of blown away by this. I think it's really, really, really well crafted. It seems like they have an idea of what they're doing conceptually, which I think may mean their next album is called 3 and it's one long consecutive track. And if that's their approach, that's cool, man, because I can't think of many bands that do that every release. Curious to see how it's done live.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I think if you go and see them live, they're either playing the first album or the second album. Like they're not playing a combination of the two. I might be wrong on that. But there's enough here to keep me really engaged with what they're doing and actively interested to see where they go.
just a trio as well, which is quite interesting.
The sound is huge for 3 people. It really is. But then they're from that part of the world where, magic things happen. Like you mentioned Gojira, there's a Gojira influence in there for sure. It's not as heavy as Gojira, but it has that density that Gojira has, that weight in their sound. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm very curious to see where they go. But yeah, like definitely on my radar now.
Yep. So final thing, scores for the new album from Mother. These are, as I said, a band to definitely keep your eye on. I know what you mean about the kind of recommendation thing because of that length. But I think like if you're a fan of black metal, or even if you're a fan of post metal, there's definite crossover there where this band would pull you in and give them at least a chance to kind of impress you.
Post metal fans are used to 10-minute tracks as a norm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So all we're asking you to do is listen to 4 of them.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
For sure. I wouldn't be surprised if this band start to appear on bigger tours going forward. I feel like there's a ton of big name bands that Mother would sit comfortably on a bill with and not sound out of place. I think definitely. I think there's bigger things to come from this band. On this release, I'm thoroughly impressed. I think this is a 4.5 out of 5. What about yourself?
Marginal below you. I'm a 4 for this one. Like you summed it up great. I am in now, and I'd like hopefully we get some of those tours. Hopefully, bands like that can sometimes. They don't always get over at the UK. I'm kind of hoping these guys are the exception to that.
Yeah. So that is a new album from Mother. Comes out on October 25th on Consouling Sounds. Links below to the band, to the pre-order. Check it out, have a listen, see what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is our review. Much appreciated. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.